Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cracking open an ancient text that literally reads like a modern-day masterclass in crisis management, leadership, and just straight-up transformation. We're looking at the book of Nehemiah. But we're not just going to treat this as some dusty historical account of a guy building a wall. No way. We're framing this as a highly practical training manual, a blueprint, really, for fixing the broken things in our own lives, our families, and our communities. Whether you're dealing with a shattered relationship, a struggling community project, or even just trying to find your own personal sense of purpose, this explainer is going to show you exactly how to rebuild right from the rubble. So let's take a quick look at our blueprint for today. We're going to start with Nehemiah's calling and identity, then move into collaboration and overcoming opposition. After that, we'll hit spiritual renewal and wrap it all up with a direct call to action. All right, kicking things off with section 1, Nehemiah's calling and identity. To really grasp the magnitude of this whole story, we've got to look at exactly who this leader was before the crisis even hit. Check out this stark contrast. Nehemiah was the king's cupbearer to the Persian king Artaxerxes. And hey, don't let the title fool you, he wasn't just some guy pouring drinks. He had to ensure the king's food and wine weren't poisoned. This meant he held a position of absolute trust. He had immense comfort and incredible status in literally the most powerful empire in the world at the time. But then, he gets this gut punch of news. Jerusalem's walls are in total ruins, the gates are burned, and his people are facing complete devastation and shame. I mean, think about it. Nehemiah is living it up in a palace of pure luxury, yet his heart just breaks for a ruined city hundreds of miles away. He truly owned the pain of his people. So what do you do when you're overwhelmed by that kind of brokenness? Well, Nehemiah didn't just sit around complaining. He systematically processed his grief. Step 1, he literally sat down, wept, and mourned for days. He let himself actually feel the weight of the tragedy. Step 2, he pivoted that mourning into fasting and praying, seeking favor from God. And then step 3, he took calculated, bold action by going straight to the king. He essentially aligned this massive, deeply emotional response with spiritual discipline before he ever even tried to map out a practical strategy. Which brings us to section 2, collaboration and leading the rebuild. Because, having a big vision is one thing, but getting people to actually execute it in a disaster zone, that's a whole different ballgame. There's this incredibly vivid principle here. Each worked on the path in front of him. The job of rebuilding a massive destroyed city wall was just overwhelmingly huge. But Nehemiah, he masterfully delegated the work. He organized everyone by families and basically said, hey, go rebuild the section of the wall that's directly in front of your own house. Think about the genius of that for a second. He made sure every single family had serious personal investment in the quality of the work. If you're building the wall that protects your own living room, you are absolutely going to make sure that wall is rock solid. The really crucial takeaway here is that Nehemiah wasn't just some distant manager barking orders from a comfy tent. True servant leadership means getting your hands dirty, and he was right there on the wall working alongside everyone else. But it actually goes deeper than that. He recognized that a community isn't just stones and mortar, it's people. When a massive economic crisis hit mid-build, where the rich were basically exploiting the poor and crushing them with debt, Nehemiah literally stopped the construction to confront the nobles and fix these social debts. He fiercely protected his team from both physical danger and economic exploitation. Of course, whenever you start fixing broken things, you're bound to ruffle some feathers. That leads us right into section 3, overcoming opposition and facing the threats. The builders were essentially fighting a two-front war here. On the outside, you had men like Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. They realized a fortified Jerusalem was a huge threat to their regional power, so they threw everything at the builders: mockeries, psychological warfare, outright lies, and even threats of military violence just to stop the work. But then, on the inside, as we just talked about, there was this severe economic crisis dividing the rich and the poor. And honestly, those internal fractures were just as dangerous to the whole project as the external enemies. A divided team simply cannot build a united wall. So how did they survive this absolute pressure cooker? I absolutely love this metaphor, working with one hand, holding a weapon with the other. When those external threats reached a boiling point, Nehemiah didn't tell everyone to pack up and stop building, but he definitely didn't leave them defenseless either. They struck this amazing balance. They held a trowel for building in one hand and a sword for fighting in the other. It just perfectly captures the reality of leadership and really of life. You often have to work incredibly hard to build your future while simultaneously fighting off the things trying to tear you down. And the result of that crazy, double-handed dedication? 52 days. Yep, you heard that right. Through God's help, brilliant organization, and just massive united effort, the ruined walls of Jerusalem were completely rebuilt in exactly 52 days. It was such an impossible, miraculous feat that even their enemies were terrified, realizing this whole thing had to be the result of divine intervention. Okay, moving right along to section 4, spiritual renewal. This is where the story pivots so beautifully, because fixing the physical problem was really just a stepping stone to a much, much deeper transformation. So here's how it plays out. First, the walls are completed, right? Physical security is finally achieved. They aren't living in constant daily fear of being attacked anymore. And because they finally have that safe space, they gather together, and Ezra the scribe reads the book of the law out loud. Hearing those words after so much hardship just breaks them open. The people weep and deeply repent. The physical security actually created the space for spiritual vulnerability. And ultimately, this leads to the covenant being renewed. They make this firm, written commitment to restore their spiritual practices and walk faithfully with God again. It turns out, the rebuilt wall was just a container. Their renewed faith was the actual treasure. But this also brilliantly illustrates a pretty tough truth about human nature. Later on, in chapter 13, we see that leadership is a continuous process. Nehemiah had to go back to Persia for a while, and the second he was gone, the people started backsliding. They compromised on the exact promises they had literally just made. So when Nehemiah came back, he had to boldly confront them, clear out the corruption, and basically restore the worship laws all over again. Continuous vigilance is absolutely required. You can't just fix a broken system once and walk away. You have to continually maintain it. All right, we've seen the blueprint. Let's bring it into the present with our final piece, section 5, call to action, rebuilding your world. Here are your ultimate takeaways from Nehemiah's manual. Number 1, buy hope. When you look at the rubble in your own life or in society, do not give up. It is totally possible to repair the broken and restore the ruined. Number 2, work together. Lasting change is almost never a solo mission. You've got to collaborate, you've got to delegate, and you have to build alongside other people. And number 3, be a leader of change. Have the absolute courage to own the problem, to empathize deeply, to pray fervently, and to take calculated action. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to chew on. What are the broken walls in your own life, your family, or your community that you need to start rebuilding today? The blueprint is right there in your hands. The real question is, are you ready to pick up the trowel and the sword and get to work? Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and I really hope you feel equipped to be a rebuilder in your own world.